Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you about my Utu Pinafore from the Named Clothing Breaking the Pattern book. So, man, this make was a doozy. My blog post is basically like a novel, so if you really have like all the time in the world to read, I have a lot to say about this one. It's mostly struggles that I brought upon myself because I should know better for a lot of the things that I did. But anyways, it's a great pattern, so please make it. So here are some pictures just to get you started. And here's Georgie, by the way, he's driving his car. So. Okay, so first I'm going to talk to you about fabric choice. When I was in Sew Over It in London, I saw the stretch corduroy that you already saw in my Makes Challenge video. But anyways, I saw the stretch corduroy kind of by accident. I was passing by this one shelf and I had to like double take it because I was like, what is that? I need that. So I went ahead and went to feel it, and then when I felt that it was corduroy, I was like, yes, I need that in my life. So I don't normally, I talk about this in my blog, I don't normally know what something's gonna be like right when I see it. Sometimes I'm just like, I just need to buy that. I don't know what it's gonna be. But I pretty much knew I wanted to make a pinafore out of this, and I wanted to make the Utu Pinafore because I had been wanting to make that, but I didn't know what kind of fabric to make it out of. And then when I saw this, I was like, yes! I knew it was gonna be kind of quirky, but I loved it. So I went ahead and bought that. And then my fabric for my lining is a Stylemaker Fabrics Viscose Batiste. So I don't think that was the best choice because when I finally attached it to the shell, which is the corduroy, it had really stretched out and warped and done all sorts of crazy things. That's not necessarily why it wasn't the best choice. I think the reason it wasn't the best choice was because it's a little bit, like it's not slippery enough. Whenever I envisioned making this corduroy pinafore, I was thinking I was going to be wearing it in the winter with like tights and things like that. So if you're thinking that you're going to wear it over something, which a pinafore you usually do, should have known that, you probably should pick a more slippery fabric. This fabric is beautiful and it would be great for something else, but I feel like it's a little bit sticky or staticky for wearing over something. So I feel like I made the wrong choice. And the fact that it was warped was really my fault because I should have known that pattern pieces cut on the bias, like in a diagonal, and like the neckline and the shoulder, the underarm seams should have been stay stitched. And stay stitching is basically good when you're worried that a fabric is gonna kind of go out of shape and end up longer than it was to begin with. And basically you sew a regular stitch or like a little bit shorter stitch length just inside your seam allowance. So let's say your seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch, you would maybe stay stitch at 1/2 an inch because you want it to, that's where it's going to be most important for your fabric to stay still and to not stretch out. But you don't want to sew it on the seam allowance because then you run the risk of that stitch being shown on the right side of the garment. So I think sewing it on the just the inside and seam allowance is smart. And then with the layout, just a reminder for corduroy, it's a fabric with a nap, so you want all the way you brush the corduroy, you want it all to be the same way. So you want your fabric to be cut out like it's a directional fabric because you don't want some of the fabric to, like the right side be able to be smooth going down and then the left side to be smooth going up. Not to mention this fabric has a noticeable pattern on it, so it can't be upside down anyways. Also, tracing the pattern was a little bit difficult, but once I got the hang of it, it wasn't bad. There's a sheet, and it has all the patterns in the book on it. There's several sheets, actually, and you just got to find the right color for the pattern that you're tracing. And this one wasn't too hard and didn't have hardly any pieces. So just one of the pattern pieces continued onto the next page. So you gotta like line it up and keep tracing. But once you figure it out, it's not hard. So the other thing is the modifications I made, there weren't that many. Basically, because I had trouble with the lining, I think I made my garment a little bit tighter than it should have been, meaning I was trying to pull out excess lining, and I think I ended up making bigger seam allowances, which would make my garment a little bit smaller. And so it's supposed to be double-breasted, where it's like it crosses over enough to basically put 2 lines of buttons. Well, only one line of buttons is going to be actually attached to a real buttonhole, and the other lines of buttons were just like decoration basically. But on the top of the on the very top button, right here on this side, you're supposed to put another button on the inside to attach to like a hidden buttonhole right here. But as you can see, like there's no room because when I attached it, I put my buttonhole here instead of like way over here, because it would have been too small for me. And so I basically couldn't technically make it like how double-breasted supposed to be, but there's still 2 rows of buttons. So, oh, and by the way, I got these buttons from Mood Fabrics, and they're so cool. All right, so for construction, man, oh man. For the lining, it was so difficult for me. I could not understand it. I had to read it over and over, and I was just like, what? And then I searched YouTube high and low to see if anybody else had shown us how to do it, and nope, nobody's done it yet. So basically, most of the construction for the lining wasn't that difficult. I have a few videos I'm going to show you of how it works. But when I got to the armholes, that was really difficult, and I decided that I was gonna video myself doing some of the parts. And so you have a whole video of me doing it wrong, and then I try to turn it back out and it doesn't work. Because I basically am like, oh, I'm just gonna turn the whole thing, like pull the whole thing out, the whole armhole out, and sew it all the way around together. And that did not work. I should have done the front and then the back like the pattern instructions tell you. Anyways, you will know what I'm talking about when you read the instructions. But I will show you how I did it wrong, and then I had to pull it out, and then I'll show you how I did it right. So here I am, reaching through the bottom open area that I haven't stitched yet through the hem, thinking I can grab basically the whole armhole and turning it through the hem. And then I'm like, oh, look at that, it's the whole armhole. I will just stitch that right up. There are the 2 wrong sides, and then I'm turning that one under, and then I start to pin all the way around. Probably shouldn't be showing you how to do it the wrong way in such detail. And now everything's pinned. And then I go to my machine and I even sew it, clip my curves, trim the seam allowances, and now I'm trying to flip it back out and show you guys how well it worked. And then I'm like, oh, that didn't work. Here I'm grabbing the front armhole edge, so it's basically from the shoulder seam to the underarm seam. I'm just grabbing that front part and basically turning the seam allowances in to where the right sides are together, and then I'm reaching in from underneath. And the reason you turn in the seam allowances is it gives you a proper orientation to grab the fabric and have it already be right sides together when you pull it out from the bottom hem. And it's a little confusing because it doesn't all want to come out at one time, and you'll have to excuse me, I'm in my pajamas. But you can see I'm starting to get, okay, I believe that is the underarm seam that I'm matching up there. So you want to match your seams. And then you go all the way to the shoulder seam and you match your notches. I went ahead and that notch was real good, but the other one was real tiny and I wanted you to see it. So I went ahead and made it a little bit deeper. And so you can see how I'm matching them. So now you know, it kind of is a good way to reassure you that even though everything looks backwards, you're doing it right. And so now I've sewn it, I've clipped it on the curves and trimmed the seam allowances a little bit. I'm turning it back right side out. You can see it's already looking pretty good. It's not all the way right side out at this point, but I'm just starting to turn it right side out. So that looks pretty good. You can understitch at this point if you like, or I actually really wanted to make sure that I was doing it right and that it was looking right. So I went ahead and pulled the whole garment right side out to double check that it was gonna work, as I had been sabotaged already before. It's like birthing a baby. Alright, so now you can see that the armhole front area is attached right there, when before it was not. So it's nice and clean, it looks good. And at this point you want to try to understitch, which it took me a while to figure it out, but basically you still have room to reach your machine in there and kind of spread out that seam and try to get your seam allowances to go to the right in this instance, so that you can attach your seam allowances to your lining, which would be the part where you're understitching. And you can't get all the way up and down that seam. You can only understitch a part of it. I just went until I could go no more. And then I went ahead and did the back shoulder seam. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I had trouble pattern matching my shell fabric. I did not realize that my fabric has like a clear stripe running through it. Like, it's not a stripe, but the pattern is very repetitive and it appears to be a stripe like from far away. So when I cut out my pieces, I didn't pay attention to that. And then when I put them together, I'll show you a picture here. When I put them together, I was like, no, that looks awful. So I ripped it all out, threw away that back piece, and decided I was going to try to match one side to the back really well, and then the other side, the pattern wouldn't continue like in the same spot, but at least the line of like the design would continue all the way across. If this was the perfect world and I could go start completely over, then I would have cut out the left front and then the back and then the right front all on one layer. That way I could match both seams. But I was not about to cut out another front piece also, so I just cut out a new back piece and redid all the darts and redrew them all, and oh Lord. All right, so now I'm going to talk about pattern fit. So I think this would have fit absolutely perfectly, but I think I pulled in a little too much when I sewed the seam allowances, because I was worried about the lining, and I was like trying to pull out the excess lining, and then I couldn't really, the edges weren't lining up, and so I couldn't really see my seam allowance. So I think I just like took a little bit too much, made it a little bit smaller. Plus the lining isn't like silky smooth on the inside, so it doesn't like slide over very well. I have to kind of like wiggle it on, but that's fine because I still love it. And then as far as the bust area, I generally have to do a small bust adjustment, and I was going to do one for this pattern, but I could not figure out for the life of me how to do it with a bust dart and a contour dart. And there is a really good video by Ready to Sew about a bust dart and a waist dart and doing a small bust adjustment. And she explains the whole thing, and it's really helpful. And I almost did that method, because a waist dart is kind of like half of a contour dart, except these contour darts, you know, they're longer on like one side of the apex of the dart than they are on the other side. And to me, it seemed like really complicated, and I was like, I really don't want to mess this up. I'm just gonna leave it alone. But now I'm wishing I would have done it because it fits, and I typically am going to wear something a little bit chunky underneath, or at least a turtleneck or something, so it'll probably be fine. But it's got a little bit more room in the bust area than I wanted. So anyways, styling, yay! Okay, so I wore this with one of my like most favorite ready-to-wear shirts, but you can wear this with a turtleneck, or even a button down. I think would be kind of cool. Like that's not what I wore it with, but it's similar to that. Like something fluffy underneath would be cool. Something with like bishop sleeves would be really cool, just like popping out. I think wearing with boots or flats, or you know, flat boots or whatever, is also really cool. I think it's really versatile. It's very memorable, I feel like, and so it's not something that I'm gonna be able to wear like all the time, because people will be like, you just wore that, because it's, you know, kind of out there. So with garments like that, like I love them, but it's like, I don't know, I can't bring myself to wear them all the time, because then people will think I'm just wearing the same thing all the time. Anyway, sorry this was so long, but it was a doozy for me. I learned so much, and I wanted to share everything with you, my successes and my failures. Hope you enjoyed the pictures, and I hope you enjoy the run through this pattern. Please refer to my blog. It's a lot more concise. It's been edited, and I can do a lot better thinking like when I'm writing. So if this didn't make sense, just refer to that. Okay, well, thanks for sticking with me, and thanks for watching this super long video. Please, if you like this video, hit the subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell so you can be notified when I have another video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. Also, in case you're wondering, this is the Papercut Patterns Palisade tee, in some Faux Suede from Papercut.com. And I have this on my Instagram somewhere, but I love this shirt. And these are like my favorite earrings from Anthropology. Anyway, just thought you might want to know. If you don't want to know, that's fine. Okay, bye!